So in Acts 21 and verse 27, 28, I want to read those. When the 7 days were nearly over, the 7 days of purification, some Jews from the province of Asia saw Paul at the temple, and they stirred up the whole crowd, and they seized him, and shouting, "The men of Israel, help us! This is a man who teaches all men everywhere against our people and our and the law and this place. And besides, he has brought Greeks into the church." It says temple, but he brought Greeks into the temple and defiled this holy place. Paul has defiled the holy place by bringing Greeks into the building. Listen, they're saying this guy Paul, he's teaching that God does certain things, and God doesn't work that way. He's teaching that God does things differently than the way that we're used to doing things. Listen, I want to remind you in Acts 5 and verse 39, where Gamaliel says, "Hey, listen, if this is of God, you're not going to be able to stop it." And now here we are, Paul going to Jerusalem 25 years later, 25 years after the crucifixion of Christ. Paul's going to Jerusalem. And back in Acts 5, Gamaliel said, "Listen, if this is of God, you're not going to be able to stop it. And if it's not of God, it'll end on its own." And so here we are, 25 years later, and in fact 2,000 years later, and it hasn't ended because it is of God. But these people here in Acts 21, they were mad at Paul because he was messing with their system. He's got a different opinion about how things ought to be done, and they didn't have an opinion about. They didn't have patience to listen to someone else's opinion. He was teaching things different, and we've got a corner on the truth, and then along comes Paul and messing with our truth, and he brought Greeks into the temple. Listen, man, I was standing with a man who was a Christian man, white guy, and he said what this verse says right here. They said Paul has brought Greeks into the church. I mean, I was standing with this guy, and he said he's just as prejudiced as these people were. He said, "I don't know what blacks here in America want. They got a black president. I don't know what else they want." I'm like, "You're stupid. That right there is the reason they say that the 11 o'clock hour is the most segregated hour in North America, because of that kind of thinking, that kind of talk right there." I don't know the depth of prejudice, and this from a white Christian guy about my age, goes to church every Sunday, say something as prejudiced and stupid and uninformed as that. And that's not unlike what's going on here. These people are mad because Paul brought Greeks. He brought blacks into the church. He's bringing Mexicans into the church, into the temple. And then it goes on, and they say, and he has defiled this holy place, right? Like they've done God a favor by being there themselves with all their prejudice and all their self-righteousness. They're going to say that Paul has defiled the temple by bringing Greeks, and yet we've got people who sit in our churches and say things like, "I don't know what blacks in America want. They got a black president." Like they're saying that he defiled this holy place, like God would be pleased with them for being there, like they've done God a favor by being there in church on Sunday morning. This is exactly why Jesus called the Pharisees, and we should check ourselves. This is why Jesus called the Pharisees in Matthew 3 and chapter 12 and chapter 23, called them a brood of vipers, whitewashed sepulchres. They were full of dead men's bones. This is why he said the axe has been laid at the root of your lies and your hypocrisy. And listen, given the condition of many Christians, the state of the church, research is everywhere talking about the people who confess to be Christians, but yet they don't have a basic Christian worldview. They don't know the basics of biblical worldview and Christian theology. Galatians 1:6, Paul says, I'm surprised at how quickly you've strayed away from the truth that I've taught you. And we're just like that. We're anemic, weak, unable to defend the scriptures. Acts 20 and verse 29, Paul says, I don't want to leave, but when I do, I know because I know that savage wolves are going to come in, even from among you. Like the guy I was just referring to, even from among you, going to twist the scripture. 2 Timothy 4 verse 3 and 4. I'm not going to listen to sound doctrine. Is it no wonder Christians are as weak as they are, embracing woke theology, critical race theory, don't know how to clarify and share the gospel, can't tell the difference between a truth and a half-truth, don't know how to defend the faith, don't know how to teach somebody how to read the Bible for themselves, or teach someone else how to read the Bible. Isn't no wonder we're so dependent on programs? The most overlooked asset the church has is the person sitting in the pew. And we're depending too much on gimmicks and programs. And we're staring straight in the face the greatest asset that we have, and that's individual believers. We don't know how to recognize objective truth. So here in Scripture, in Acts 21, verse 27, these people are mad because Paul has brought Greeks into the temple and defiled the holy temple. Like their own sin hasn't defiled the temple. So God help us as we seek to have authentic faith, accurately reflects Scripture, and if while we're sharing the gospel, they stumble over the gospel, not over us being rude or arrogant.